بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. فما بعد, I've been listening to a very interesting podcast on the Thinking Muslim podcasts of Dr. Yaqub Ahmed, who is a historian, and I recommend this to all of you. Do listen to the podcast. That is a very good podcast site anyway, and this particular one is a particularly good one. Now, it so happens, alhamdulillah, that when you think about some things and you are either looking for answers, or you have the answer but you are looking for the best way to present it and so on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps you. And I think this is what happened just now with me with regard to this podcast, because Dr. Yaqub Ahmed, in his the points that he talked about, he mentioned some of the most important things that I have been thinking about, and we have been having discussions about them with some of our friends. And that was the importance of the teacher. Dr. Yaqub Ahmed made a very interesting point, and he he made a little phrase almost. He said, "We write books to be taught, not to be read. We write books to be taught, not to be read." Now, it's a very interesting thing to think about, and the importance, therefore, of differentiating between knowledge and wisdom. I will come to that in a bit, but the difference between, it's very important to differentiate these things. Today, we talk about, we have phrases like students of knowledge, and we say, I'm in the business of seeking knowledge, and I'm seeking knowledge. Our concept of seeking knowledge is we read books, some of us write books, we get degrees from this or that university, and we consider ourselves to be educated and to be knowledgeable. But see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us about what is knowledge and how knowledge is to be sought. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the famous ayat in Surah Al-Imran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ بَعَثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِّنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتِهِ وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَإِنْ كَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, which means, Allah said, truly and surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed the believers by raising from among them a messenger, a teacher. And Allah mentioned four things that the teacher was charged to do. Yatlu alayhim ayatihi, to recite for them the ayat of Allah, to recite for them the signs of Allah, the kalam of Allah, the wahi that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent. Yatlu alayhim ayati wa yuzakkihim, to purify them, wa yu'allimuhum al-kitaba wal-hikmah, and to teach them the Quran, teach them the book, and then to give them wisdom, to teach them wisdom. Now, if you just reflect on this and say that what is the significance of all this, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, He gave these things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning the teacher as His blessing. لَقَدْ مَنَّ اللَّهُ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِذْ بَعَثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا. Allah did not say, إِذْ أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْهِمُ الْكِتَابِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِذْ بَعَثَ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا. Allah did not say the blessing on the believers was that Allah sent to them a book. Allah said, no. Allah said He sent to them and He raised from among them a teacher. Now, the raising from among them the teacher was a double blessing, because on the one hand it was the importance and the barakah and the beauty of the teacher. The second was that the teacher was from among themselves, and therefore the teacher was not a stranger. The teacher was not somebody that they didn't know. The teacher was not a different form of life. The teacher was one of them. So therefore, this teacher was somebody who was, hugely important and hugely, therefore, hugely, Allah called him the teacher. Allah called him his blessing. And then Allah Subhanahu wa Taala said, "This teacher came to teach you the book." Allah Subhanahu wa Taala said, تبارك الذي نزل على عبده الكتاب ليكون للعالمين نذيرا. The first ayat of Surah Al-Furqan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Allah sent on his abd, on his slave, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his kitab. Allah did not say that Allah sent this kitab for all human beings or all people and all believers. Obviously the kitab is for all human beings, but the kitab was sent to the messenger in order that he may teach the book. So I come to what Dr. Yahuwah said, we write books to be taught, not to be just read. Now, this is a very important thing because it illustrates and it brings with it a particular attitude towards teaching and learning, which either is helpful or is harmful, which either facilitates learning or it blocks learning. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the book to the teacher and the teacher to the people to teach them the book, which explains the role and critical importance of the teacher as being the via media, as being between the message and the recipient of the message. Remember, the Quran al-Kareem was a verbal message. Allah did not send a piece of paper. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent His word. He spoke to Jibreel alayhi salam and Jibreel alayhi salam spoke to Rasulullah. So the teacher, in this case, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's teacher in this case was Jibreel alayhi salam, and Jibreel alayhi salam was taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught the same thing to his companions, to his Sahaba, to his students. So the teacher to the people to teach them the book. The book was sent to the teacher, which, as I said, it is a verbal message. Now, without the messenger, you cannot and you could not possibly understand the message. To explain the message, think about this. Why must a message which is in a language that you understand and in a language that you are the master of, which was the case with the Arabs to whom the Quran was sent, and the Quran was sent in Arabic. So what was the need for somebody to explain? يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ, teach them the book. Why? Here is a book in the language that I understand. It is coming to me. Why do I need somebody else? I can understand, right? I can read and I can understand. Why do I need somebody else? Now, the very fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that you need somebody shows that the explainer who was charged with the responsibility of explaining the language, the message, has more knowledge and wisdom than what is apparent and what can be got by simply reading the message. Now this is an implication when somebody says, here is something, teach them. Teach, you know what I'm saying. I mean, he is able to teach because he has more knowledge than what is apparent by just reading the message. And that is what the position of the Wahi Ghair Matlu, the position of the Sunnah of Rasulullah, which was granted to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as I mentioned, gave Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam 4 tasks. Tilawat al-Quran, to recite the Quran. Tazkiyatun nafs, purify the person, purify their souls, purify them internally and externally, their hearts and their spirits and their behavior and their speech and their actions, in order to make the place suitable for the message to take effect. And then Ta'alimul Quran, teach them the book. And then Ta'alimul Hikmah, teach them wisdom. So 3 steps with the 4th one, which is Tazkiyah, to enable the person to benefit. And what are the 3 steps? Information, knowledge and wisdom. The purification is the 4th step, so that the student can benefit from the learning. The importance of acknowledging the value and position of wisdom is very, very, very critical. Now think about that. Information is just random bits and pieces of information, right? You can get it all over the place. It comes today. We are flooded, inundated with information, random information which comes to us from all over the place. Information. We are actually suffering today not from a lack of information, but from a surfeit of information, from too much information. We have most of us have no clue what to do with that information. How do we organize this information? How do we use this information? How do we leverage the information? We have no clue. We just get these messages and messages and messages in chat groups and forwards and whatnot, and it's driving people crazy. And that's because there is no teacher involved. Now you take this information, which is you organize that information, that gets converted to what we call knowledge, ilm, right? Information is ma'lumat, ittala'at. Knowledge is ilm, which is experienced, which is in that information in organized form. And then when that experience, that information which is organized, now this is where the teacher comes in. Not everyone has the time to do it, not everyone has the ability to do it, not everyone can do it, but those who do, who dedicate their lives to learning and to teaching, they experience this information, they practice the knowledge, they have experience, and then they conceptualize that experience into a teachable form. It's not everyone who can teach. So conceptualizing the information into a teachable form. How do you teach? What is the specific way of teaching? And there is no one specific way of teaching. Some things are taught experientially. Some things are taught by allowing the student to make a mistake and feel some pain. Some things are taught in a theoretical form. Some things need experimentation and so on. So conceptualizing it into teachable form, that is what is called wisdom. Now by reading, you only get to the second place. You've got information, and what you're reading is knowledge, which somebody else, someone else like you, who had information, who wrote it down, and who organized it, created a book, wrote a book, and that is knowledge. You only get to the second place. To truly benefit, you need the human agency of the teacher. You need the humility to go to the teacher and to accept that you need to learn, and put yourself under the tutelage of the teacher, and have the humility and understanding to say that I am the one in need, that I need to learn. If you take the case of, for example, Musa alayhi salam and Khidr, think about this. Here is Musa alayhi salam. He is one of the greatest of the prophets and messengers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends him to Khidr, who is not even a prophet or messenger in that way, but he sent him to Khidr to learn. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't tell Khidr, go to Musa and teach him, because Musa says he wants to learn. He sends the student to the teacher. He doesn't send the teacher to the student. This is one of our biggest problems today, where we tell the teacher to come to us at a time that is convenient for us, not at the time that's convenient for the teacher. We want the teacher to do all the hard work. We want the teacher to make the sacrifices, and we want the teacher to humble himself or herself for us, and usually the reason is because of money. The teacher is poor, we have the money, so we call the shots. Now, brothers and sisters, let me end this here. I will come back to this again in the next podcast. But really, really seriously, let's ask ourselves, if you really want to learn, we have to follow the process that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. Otherwise, we will have what we have today, which is people who think they are knowledgeable, who have a whole bunch of so-called knowledge, but it's really information in their heads and in their pockets and in their libraries, and which produces in them arrogance, which is the first and most reliable sign of ignorance. Zaluman jahula. Allah said the one who is zalim and who is jahil. Allah did not say the one who is zalim is also knowledgeable. No, he is jahil. Having knowledge, Iblis and Shaitan had more knowledge than anybody else, but that he was jahil. That was not a sign of his knowledge, it was a sign of his jahal, of his ignorance, that he did not even recognize the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He did not recognize the danger of disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah to protect us from arrogance, to protect us from ignorance, to protect us from kibr, to protect us from imagining that we are worth something, and to put humility in us so that we can go and submit ourselves to teachers and say, please teach me. وصلى الله على نبي الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.